SKOL Vikings, let's win this game.
Vikings fans, this season has officially turned into a test of patience. The year has shifted from chasing a playoff spot to becoming a live-fire quarterback laboratory. In the middle of the chaos, a young defender stepped up and kept the flame alive. But that is not all. The front office is moving quickly, and there is a trade proposal on the table that could reshape this offense. You are also going to see exactly how the primary target in the passing game responded to a big-time challenge. And to wrap it all up, Kevin O'Connell left hanging in the air a decision that is going to shock a lot of people. But before we dive into every detail of this breakdown, let us get something straight. Hit that subscribe button on the channel. It does not cost you anything, it is completely free, and it keeps this bleacher-style conversation alive. Drop a like as well, because believe it or not, that is what makes YouTube push this video out to more Purple fans around the world. And make sure to jump into the comments, because this space belongs to everyone who lives and breathes this team together. Look, sitting at 4-6 changes the conversation completely. The truth is, whether people like it or not, the rest of this season has turned into a live experiment for J.J. McCarthy. It hurts to say that, and everyone knows it. This year started with big dreams, talking playoffs, talking about staying in the fight at the top, not about doing math on quarterback development. If that final sequence against the Bears had gone differently, we might be telling a completely different story right now. A properly covered kickoff return, one more defensive stop, or even Cairo Santos missing that last-second kick again, and suddenly you are at 5-5 with real hope. Instead, it did not break that way. The field flipped, the kick went through, and the Purple Faithful woke up on Monday realizing that, realistically, only a 6-1 run down the stretch would put this team back into the playoff conversation. To be honest with you, this does not look like a 6-1 team right now. Not with JJ still so inconsistent, mechanics up and down, slow reads at times, accuracy coming and going. He got hurt early, missed 5 games, came back without rhythm, and now every snap feels like an emotional roller coaster. It is exhausting. Some drives it feels like you are watching 2 different quarterbacks in the same game, and that leads to the central point. These 7 remaining games are no longer about wins and losses. They are about figuring out who McCarthy really is. The dream scenario is him settling in, cleaning up his footwork, locking his eyes into what Kevin O'Connell wants, and showing growth week after week. He does not need to morph into a superstar overnight, but he does need to show a path, show direction, because only here do you get this kind of Vikings fan perspective that is tired of empty promises. The nightmare is obvious. He keeps hovering around a completion rate just a tick over 1/2, flirts with 20 interceptions over 12 games, and leaves the offense stuck in mud. Then the dialogue shifts from "he is the future" to "can you actually trust this guy in 2026? That is when the locker room weighs in. That is when Justin Jefferson starts looking around. That is when veterans start wondering how much of their remaining careers they can afford to spend waiting. At the same time, you cannot just toss the kid aside. There are plenty of examples of quarterbacks who started horribly and grew into franchise players. There are Josh Allen stories out there, but there is also a Josh Rosen example. 1 year and gone, O'Connell keeps hammering mechanics, details, that feet and eyes mantra he repeats constantly. Between the lines, he is saying JJ has the arm talent. What is missing is turning that into steady accuracy, not just one heroic 85-yard drive when everything is on fire. So over these next 7 games, the clock is not only on the scoreboard, it is also the clock of patience. At some point, real progress has to show up on the screen, not just in the press conference. Drop your thoughts in the comments if you agree with this shift in focus toward 2026, because plenty of people are having a hard time swallowing that, and stay locked in until the end, because the last story of the day is a big one. Speaking of hope in the middle of chaos, the next chapter comes from a defender who chose the perfect moment to step into the spotlight. You know what kept things from completely falling apart in that game against the Bears? Dallas Turner's performance. In the middle of so much going wrong, he was one of the few players who made you stop and think, all right, there is something real developing here. On a day when the defense was gassed, the offense was sputtering, and the atmosphere felt heavy, seeing a young edge rusher respond, like that gives a jolt of energy to anyone who still truly believes in Defend the North. To be honest, there was reason to be concerned about Turner. He is a first-round pick. The price to get him was high, expectations were sky-high, and his outing so far had been lukewarm. Just isolated flashes buried inside games. Then, all of a sudden, he steps in for Greenard, plays 67 of 75 defensive snaps, racks up 7 tackles, including 1 sack and 1 tackle for loss, breaks up a pass in coverage, and matches his career high in pressures. That is the kind of tape you file away. Of course, nobody is pretending it was a flawless performance. He nearly let a sack slip away with the quarterback already in his grasp, and on that long screen, if he arrives a half second earlier, we might be talking about a Van Ginkel-style pick six in a completely different atmosphere right now. But that is exactly what is exciting. He is close. He is around the ball. He is reading the field better. What is left is turning almost into game-changing plays, and that comes with reps. Context matters too. Turner spent a big chunk of the afternoon matched up against a backup left tackle, a player still trying to secure his place in the league. You can say that made life a bit easier for him on certain snaps. Even so, when you put on the tape, the physical foundation is undeniable. Burst off the line, power in the bull rush, the ability to collapse the pocket, and the range to drop into zone and clog passing lanes. Pure raw talent, though, is not enough, and everybody knows it. The encouraging thing is how clearly he is growing within Brian Flores' system. You see him lining up in different spots, sometimes attacking more aggressively, sometimes backing off, adjusting depending on whether he is filling in for Greenard or Van Ginkel. It is like he is still assembling his toolbox, figuring out which move fits each situation. The fan base, and yes, the women in the stands too, are starting to see the potential for a breakout third season if this development curve holds. Only here do you get this kind of Vikings fan perspective, feeling the game beyond the box score. The defense still needs more consistency, and Turner has to become a constant presence, not just a promise. But in this sea of frustration, watching a young player answer the call like that is a relief, a much-needed breath of fresh air. Drop a comment if you agree with how he is trending, and stay until the end because the last story is heavy. And speaking of shaking up the future of the franchise, the next part is all about a quarterback name that could seriously change the long-term plan in Minnesota. Now it is time to kick a hornet's nest in Minnesota. While everyone tries to figure out how wild this J.J. McCarthy roller coaster can get, there's a situation brewing in San Francisco that might land right on the Vikings' doorstep. Mac Jones emerging as a trade target for Minnesota. Just saying that out loud splits the fan base in half, with some people fired up and others taking a deep skeptical breath. That is normal. Living in this eternal quarterback dilemma is pretty much part of the Vikings nation identity. Here is the quick backdrop. The 49ers just backed up the truck for Brock Purdy, a long-term deal that stamps him as their franchise quarterback. He has returned from injury and played well enough against the Cardinals to remind everyone that the job is his. But while he was sidelined, Mac Jones stepped in and ran that offense at a very high level. He was not a phenomenon, but he was efficient, protected the ball, distributed it well, and kept the system humming. When the NFL smells a functional quarterback who might be available, every radar in the league turns on. To be honest with you, given Minnesota's current situation, it makes a ton of sense for this conversation to heat up heading into 2026. Right now, the Vikings have a raw young talent in McCarthy who is clearly not ready yet. The roster around him is stacked with good players. The window for some veterans is closing, and the patience level among fans is running low. A player like Mac Jones would arrive as the guy who is not a superstar, but can execute Kevin O'Connell's plan without turning every offensive series into a soap opera. He is the classic steady the ship while the kid learns option. The numbers back that up. With Kyle Shanahan in San Francisco, Jones has thrown for more than 2,000 passing yards with 13 touchdown passes, only 6 interceptions, and nearly 70% completions. That is exactly the profile an offensive play caller loves. Quick processor, accurate in the short and intermediate game, and capable of sustaining drives. Picture that kind of quarterback operating with Jefferson, Addison, Hawkinson, and a functional running game. Your imagination starts to take off. It really does make you want to dream a little. At the same time, there is a real risk in bringing in too competent a veteran. If you do that, you run the risk of McCarthy becoming a permanent backup, losing confidence and losing his connection with the fan base. But if you do not bring anyone in and he keeps riding this up and down wave, the rest of the locker room can start getting frustrated. It is a brutal balancing act. Only here do you get this kind of Vikings fan read worn out from living at the extremes. The way it looks from this seat, Mac Jones would be a bridge, not the destination, a quarterback to keep the offense competitive while JJJ fixes his mechanics, improves his processing, and learns how to be a pro at the right pace. Share your thoughts in the comments if you agree with this bridge idea, and stay to the end because the final story is a big one. And since we are already talking about pressure, the next chapter is about Justin Jefferson showing exactly what real leadership looks like in the middle of a storm. In the middle of all this chaos, one thing really stands out. Justin Jefferson. He has every reason in the world to be furious. The team is losing, the offense is sputtering, and his numbers are well below what he is used to producing. Even so, when he steps in front of the microphone after that loss to the Bears, he chooses the leadership route. That carries a lot of weight inside a locker room, and it matters just as much to everyone wearing purple on the outside. To be honest with you, if this were another star wide receiver, you could easily imagine an explosive press conference. We have seen that movie across the league. Jefferson does the opposite. He acknowledges the frustration, admits that it is tough, but pulls everything back to the idea that it is part of the process and that everyone has to be better in every phase. There are no veiled shots, no lines designed to turn the crowd against the quarterback. It is pure maturity, which still feels surprising for a player this young. Look at the situation. He is the player with the most receiving yards in league history to start a career. Suddenly, with McCarthy under center, he hits a stretch where he is putting up something in the low 50s in receiving yards per game instead of the usual fireworks. Against Chicago, he saw 9 targets, caught 5 balls for 61 yards, and even had one pass that he might have been able to make a play on, but it came in like a rocket high over his head. The others, not even in his zip code. It makes you want to yell at the television, and everybody knows that feeling. Instead of exploding, he talks about the whole operation. He says everyone needs to execute better, that the urgency was not there, that they have to get back to work. When he brings up JJJ, he points straight to that final drive, the 85-yard march where the young quarterback stacked completions, stayed calm, and found the go-ahead touchdown. Jefferson could have used the full body of an ugly offensive performance as ammunition, but chooses to spotlight the moment when the quarterback delivered. That is how you protect a locker room. There is more. He puts himself out front. He says that as a captain, he needs to be the first to face the situation, that he has to build more chemistry with McCarthy, take extra time with him, do whatever it takes to flip the switch. He does not pretend this is painless. He just refuses to throw anyone under the bus. The Purple Faithful can feel when their star is fully invested even during the rough patches, and that keeps hope alive. Only here do you get this Vikings fan angle that looks beyond cold numbers. Because the truth is, if Jefferson ever truly loses patience, the whole structure starts to shake. As long as he is holding the line, there is still room for adjustments, conversations, and change. Drop a comment if you agree with this style of leadership, and stay tuned until the end because the last story hits hard. And since we are already in the most tense part of the show, the next segment features Kevin O'Connell answering directly about whether McCarthy could be taken off the field. Now we have reached the part where the conversation really tightens. After that Bears game, Kevin O'Connell was asked point blank about the possibility of pulling J.J. McCarthy, and his answer was short, firm, and crystal clear. He does not want to go there right now. That says a lot. It tells you how the team views the moment, what kind of trust is still there, and how far this coaching staff is willing to ride out the quarterback journey O'Connell keeps talking about. To be honest with you, it is easy to understand why many fans walked out of that stadium calling for McCarthy to hit the bench. It was another day of high throws, passes behind receivers, 2 interceptions, and boos raining down at home. That is heavy. You look at the 19-17 final. Remember the comeback drive he put together over 85 yards, and still think, how can the same guy look so different within the same game? It twists a fan's brain. There is no other way to put it. O'Connell, though, is reading it from another angle. He talks constantly about emotion, about keeping the kids centered, about going back to that feet and eyes coaching point again and again. He insists that JJ is living the full package of a young quarterback's reality, ugly mistakes, flashes of courage, shaky moments when the stadium feels like it is crashing down, and sparks of leadership when the team needs that one long scoring drive. Between the lines, he is saying the plan is still to develop, not to punish, at least for now. When you look at the raw numbers, it is jarring. He has the lowest completion rate among the starters, a quarterback rating near the bottom, already 8 interceptions, and if the trend does not change, the projection is ugly. Then comes the piece the coach will not let go of. Over the last 2 starts, even while playing poorly overall, McCarthy has taken only 1 sack on 31 pressures. That points to some pocket growth, more calm, less panic. What is missing is turning that improved poise into consistent on-time throws, making that the norm instead of the exception. Only here do you get this Vikings fan-level read on the situation, feeling the weight of the decision. Benching the kid now would come with a massive price. It might cool off part of the crowd in the short term, but what message does that send to the locker room? And to him? At the same time, continuing to push him out there if he completely falls apart also has a cost, especially with veterans very aware of the ticking clock on their careers. It is a brutally difficult balance. The sense here is that O'Connell's message was, the job is still his, but the runway is not endless. That is what it feels like. The staff is going to stretch this project as far as they can because they know how hard it is to find a quarterback. Share your take in the comments if you see it the same way, and stick around for the conclusion because we still need to tie all of this together and define exactly what kind of moment this is for the Vikings. In the end, it all connects. The forced laboratory around McCarthy, Turner knocking on the door for more snaps, the Mac Jones rumor swirling, Jefferson holding everything together, and O'Connell doubling down on this quarterback journey. This is a talented roster trapped in an identity crisis, and honestly, either this pain becomes the foundation for something big, or 2025 is going to hurt even more. It is a scary feeling in a strangely exciting way. Jump into the comments, because this space belongs to everyone who is part of the Vikings Nation. This team gets into our heads every single day, so make sure you are here for the next video. Stay tuned. SKOL Vikings, let's go!